It's really spending the time up front to think about the needs and to think about what's going to help them immediately and that's most relevant to them, and you're going to find success.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Rapport.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport. I'm Tim Finnigan, and I'm your host, and I also lead the product marketing team here at Verisk Marketing Solutions. Today, I sat down with Tim Fagan, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at TEGNA, huge media company, and we were able to talk about some of the challenges that he sees in the industries. He actually debunks some of the myths about the demise of broadcast TV. And then we touched on how he leads through challenging times, especially now with big companies and tech companies laying off people, and what he and his company are doing to try to retain those customers and retain those employees. And then finally, we talked about his point of view on how you can align business to achieve a common goal. Again, great discussions, and I was very thankful for Tim to join us here at the Marketing Rapport. Have a great day and enjoy. Welcome to the Marketing Rapport podcast. As I mentioned, I've got Tim Fagan with me today. And before I get into all these hard-hitting questions in this, obviously it's going to be a great conversation, Tim, I want to make sure our audience knows that we do have some history. And I'm sure you remember this. College roommate of mine, Mr. Dave Grotto, keyed me into an opportunity you had in your marketing function I think you were at TEGNA. So I reached out to him like, Tim, hey, I would love to talk to you about this role. So you were kind enough to meet with me. We networked. You've almost become like a mentor to me because I was going for a chief marketing officer role. I met with you. But I want to go back to that first opportunity. You never really helped me get a job, but we did connect. So welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. It's good to be here. I am sorry still for that. My failure in getting you a job, but the friendship that formed and getting your daughters into running and all the things we've done since then has been a blessing. It really has.
So, Tim, I really love your experience and how you've sort of been in this sort of internet-based, cars, home finder, things like that. And now you're at TEGNA. Could you just briefly explain what TEGNA is to someone who's maybe not familiar with you guys? Because you're a national brand. It's like this great advertising company. So if you could just quickly tell us about TEGNA, and then as you being Chief Revenue Officer, what you're doing and sort of your what you're responsible for right now.
Yeah, sure. So TEGNA is we're a media company. Our legacy, our roots are in broadcast television. Most consumers will know some of our brands like KUSA in Denver or WFAA in Dallas. So we're one of the largest operators of what we call the Big Four affiliate TV stations. We're a publicly traded company. We've got 64 stations in 50 markets across the U.S. We also have been evolving with the marketplace. We have a leading streaming advertising platform called Premion. We have a podcasting business called Locked On Podcast, which is all about local sports, local professional and college sports. And of course, we have a suite of digital solutions. So we're, kind of what we like to think of ourselves as a full funnel platform for advertisers. But ultimately, being in the news business, with our TV stations, we're all about providing news and information to our communities. So our mission is to serve the greater good of our communities. And on the news side, we do that through storytelling, investigative reporting, providing all the goodies that local communities need, weather events, political controversies, just everything local communities need out of their news. And then on my side of the house, on the advertising side, it's helping local businesses grow. It's hard to have a vibrant community without a strong economy. And really our mission on the advertising side is to help businesses connect with advertisers to get their messages out and to ultimately sell their products and services. So it's been fun. You mentioned being on the early internet days. I think all that experience kind of helped me. In media, it's all about connecting consumers with advertisers, and doing so at TEGNA with the big footprint of stations, but also the broad reach of a local broadcast TV station, has been rewarding.
So on the advertiser, the business side, are you tired of hearing of this objection? Everybody knows me. Like that's when I was in media sales, like, no, not everybody does know you. But so Tim, what are you most concerned with, like right now in your role, or what are you most responsible for? What's your charge?
Yeah. So as Chief Revenue Officer, so I set the vision and the framework and the execution of our advertising businesses. So we call our suite of products advertising and marketing services. So consumers may think of it as, we sell TV commercials on broadcast television. We sell video spots on our streaming platform on Premium. We sell display products and video products on our websites, on our mobile apps, on our streaming apps. And so and again, I mentioned our podcasting business. So it's really getting advertisers to access our audiences through those various platforms.
Yeah, as you were saying, broadcast TV. What about the myth that broadcast TV is dead and it's no longer? Is that true? Or can you enlighten us?
Yeah, no, it's not true. I'll ask you if you watched the Super Bowl, and if anyone watched the Super Bowl.
Wait, are you allowed to say Super Bowl, or don't you just say the big game? I don't know if you're allowed to say. I think you owe $5 for that.
To the NFL. Yeah, no, I like talking about the big game. It is an egregious example of the power of broadcast TV. Obviously, live sports is an egregious example of what we like to call shared emotional experiences. And, 113 million Americans tuned into the big game. That number just continues to grow. Here we are, almost in the middle of March. March Madness is going to attract record audiences this year. People just they crave community. I think COVID really kind of had a part in that, and they want to experience these things together. And so it's not dead. I'd be naive to think that it isn't continuing to fragment. You think about your own personal television viewing consumption habits, and you're all over the map. You're watching streaming. You might be watching local news on a streaming platform. You might be watching, cable, so the world is fragmented and continues to fragment. But for an advertiser, local television still is like the biggest megaphone for a local market, and can provide, whether it's for brand awareness or for, kind of bottom of the funnel, I need my phone to ring. Mm-hmm. It's still a very attractive CPM. It's still a very, very attractive audience, and it's not dead. The demographic, continues to trend older, but for many verticals, I'll mention political, political candidates and issues in a political cycle continues to spend a lot of money on broadcast TV because of the power and reach of the media.
Let's spin this and just talk politics. Let's go, Tim, because I know we have
different
views. But what I'd love for you to touch on, Tim, is that so TEGNA is this big company, and I'd like for you to touch on, if you could, you had mentioned there was a pending sale and some things were going on, but if you could just give people advice, like someone who's listening to this, because there's so much going on with the tech industry about people losing their job. I mean, I've lost, I've been let go. But when you're in a big business, I guess you could be in any company, but when you have all this outside noise, like, oh, we didn't get this, the sales not going through, or we need to do this, we need to drive the number for the stock market, or a bunch of people are being laid off. How do you as a leader keep especially sales involved and marketing involved? Like, I've still got something to do. You had talked about what TEGNA's mission is, and I love that. But could you just go on, just give your point of view on how, as a leader, you keep that together?
Yeah, sure. No, it's, leaders are earning their paychecks, right, during times of adversity and uncertainty. And before we went live here, Tim, we talked about TEGNA, public company. It was announced over a year ago that we were being taken private by a private equity fund. And that was announced. And of course, you go through all the regulatory hurdles in our business. And we still have not yet received regulatory approval. And in fact, there was some news about a week and a half ago. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, still has some issues about the transaction. And all of this stuff is way above my pay grade. And I just know what I read. But to your point and your question, it brings a lot of uncertainty and distractions to the organization. And so our jobs as leaders is to, and I always like to say, remind yourself why you fell in love with this business. Why did you get into sales? Why do you like to help customers grow their business? Why do you like to network? Why do you like to, whatever it is you like to do, leaders need to remind colleagues, fall back in love with the business and try to really focus on the things that you can control and that you can do for your customers. And, when we got the news, the FCC had questions and it was, kind of a blow to the deal. The first thing I thought of is, where am I going to be next week? Because next week's going to be a weird week. And I was going to be with a room full of salespeople and I was going to be with customers. And that's exactly where I wanted to be. And I don't want to exclude my marketing friends. I had marketing friends. So it's really walking the walk and reminding people, just continue to do the things that make you happy at work. And being in sales and marketing, it's really being with other people and doing the things that, got us into this in the first place.
So when you were going into that meeting where you were with sales, marketing, and customers, and that, the pending, that just was announced, did you know going into there, like, I better get my elevator pitch of what I'm going to say about this? And even in other situations, because I know in sales, people practice and role play sales calls all the time. Do you do that as a leader when you're going to, have to talk about something serious like that?
Yeah. So I certainly anticipate it. Sales and marketing people are not shy. And so at this meeting, we had a lunch kind of panel Q&A. And of course, the questions about the sale were the first, the middle, and the last question. So I anticipate, and again, it's easy for me being, not being in the M&A group and the circles. I don't need to filter any information that I know, but then I'm not allowed to say. I don't know. But what I did anticipate and what was asked was, well, what do we do now? What do we tell customers? How do we run our day to day? And that for me is easy, right? It's just back to the basics and then really conveying to these customers, listen, all this stuff is so far above us and really has nothing to do with your business needing to grow, our relationship, what we can do to help you. And, ultimately, how is our relationship going to continue to flourish? And because it's easy to get distracted, and whether it's what's going on in the global economy, the fears of recession, what's happening with our political divide, whatever it is, we just have to sit down, particularly with clients, and say, listen, this is what we think about your vertical, your business, and this is how we think we can help. And if we just continue to just focus on that, not only will you advance the business further because you're in it, but you're just going to be happier. If you can go 3 days without thinking about something that you have no control over, you're just happier. And so we find people that are just more happy and executing on the things that they're good at, you're just going to get better outcomes.
Yeah. And you said a couple of things I want to react to. When you say the sales or the team is going to the customers and just asking, like, how can we help? Or this is how I think we can help, identifying those challenges. And you're going to have a better conversation anyway, rather than trying to product push or, but I also think what we can come up too is that as long as you have, like we've talked about storytelling and how important it is, as long as you have your story, it's like, hey, we're here to help you. And that goes a long way versus, hey, I know there could be a sale or there's a takeover or, all those issues you talked about.
Yeah.
Because like my company just went through that a year ago. So we were a private equity firm, owned us and sold us to Verisk Analytics. And now we're Verisk Marketing Solutions. And our whole thing to our customers was we would communicate and update them on this, but it's like, you're actually going to either have no change or it's going to be better because you're going to have more people willing to help and you have more opportunity. So it's all how you tell that story, I think, is really important.
Yeah. And that's where we were talking earlier about, marketing and sales and what are the elements of that relationship that really kind of create the most value. And I think storytelling really gets to the heart of what strong B2B marketers can really add to a sales organization, right? Which is getting us as sellers really focused on the broader picture, understanding needs. There's all of your kind of your basics that we all went through, Tim, in sales training. But then our most successful sellers are ones that can do the needs analysis, really understand kind of fits in terms of media solutions and needs, but then ultimately capture the trust of that client through a story that is not only believable, right, but it's one that is going to demonstrate value, right, immediately, and that can grow from there. And so we spend a lot of time with our marketing team spends a lot of time with us, helping us with that story. And it starts with insights, what's happening in their vertical that they don't know about, because we have the benefit, we'll have a television station in Cleveland, Ohio, and we can talk about what's happening in the healthcare industry, in 25 other markets that might resemble Cleveland. So we can I call it bringing wine to the dinner party. Don't show up to a sales call without bringing something that's going to be useful to them.
Right.
And because who doesn't like wine at a dinner party? And then again, back to the marketing help, how can we tell a story that advertiser can really relate to? And so that's that intersection of storytelling and insights and understanding consumer trends with the solutions that sales can bring. That intersection is really the value creation. So I've always believed in that.
So if the audience was playing a game on how many times you're going to bring up Cleveland, we should let everyone know that you're from Cleveland originally.
Did I bring it up more than once?
Oh my God. I don't know if it was pre or any other conversation we've had that you always weave Cleveland, you went to Notre Dame, or you're a better athlete than me. Those are the three things that. Tim, when you were talking about sales and the storytelling, I'm interested in your point of view on this. And this is, you probably have a lot of young sales reps or young people coming into your business. So how do you help them level up to, how the good sales reps, or how do you describe like, oh, here's your trajectory. I mean, you're starting new, you can't be the best right away, or if you want to be, here's what you have to do. But also also the advice to a business owner that's talking to one of their young employees, like what can they do, or what have you been doing to help them level up to speed up that learning process?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. And it's there's a number of things that you can prescribe, not all of them will take, and a lot of it depends on the athlete, if you will, someone who, their ability to adapt and to execute. We tell people, right, get exposed to as many things as you can. When you're out in our business, we call into a lot of different verticals. So we might be a little broader than other businesses. We tell people, if you're in a vertical that you're really, really comfortable with and become passionate about, really understand that vertical as deeply as you can. Back to storytelling. We had a room full of sellers, as I alluded to earlier. And there's that famous Mark Twain quote, right? I didn't have enough time to write a short story, so I wrote a long one. And It's really helping our younger sellers to say, just stop and think about whether you're putting together a pitch deck or the proverbial elevator pitch verbally. What are you going to do that's going to help on the receiving end of that conversation? What are you going to do that's going to help them immediately? And we all get into, this baton death march of slides and 35, slide PowerPoint decks. And I think that's always the wrong answer. It's really spending the time up front to think about the needs and to think about what's going to help them immediately and that's most relevant to them, and you're going to find success. I think oftentimes sellers, they're type A, they want to be successful, they want to win, they want to run fast. And, we find that our most successful ones are ones that start slower, really spend more time up front. And when they do go on sales calls, they are as prepared as they can be. And they're going to be the ones that find more success than others.
Right. That's some great advice, because I do see that a lot with younger people coming in, and they want to learn, they want to be better, and they need that path. And there's, we talk about, and I may have brought it up last episode, but there is mentoring, but there's reverse mentoring too. Like someone who's older and more experienced can not only learn from a new person, but be re-energized and things like that. So
absolutely.
Do you have any good sales analogies for me that you've maybe like you've gotten in front of your people and like, okay, I need to tell a story to get them to understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. And there's one that is near and dear to your heart, Tim. And that's, I talked recently to a room full of salespeople about the ultimate team sport. And, if I ask a room, what's the ultimate team sport? You'll get answers like, basketball and football or soccer. Very rarely does someone say high school cross country running, which for those listeners, Tim and I both had our daughters run cross country at the same high school. And it was a sport I immediately fell in love with. And the reason being is not only does it bring discipline and camaraderie, and our girls became great friends and they had a great group of teammates, but it really is the ultimate team sport. And for cross-country teams to win a state championship, it helps if you have a really gifted runner or two. But the way cross-country is scored is you run 7 girls or boys, but in our case, Tim, it was girls, and the top 5 score. And if you go downstate in Illinois, you might have 50 schools running on a given day. So that's 350 runners. And the first girl to cross the finish line gets 1 point, the second one gets 2, and so on. And the lowest team score wins. Well, you can't win a championship if your 3rd, 4th, or 5th runners are in the 200s of their score. You're just not going to win. And those teams that prepare their runners to not only run as hard as they can and as strategically as they can, but to think about the outcome of your 3rd, 4th, and 5th runners, those are the teams that win championships. And as I think about our sales organization, and we've got, as I mentioned, 50 stations, we've got a national sales team, we've got pockets of cross-country teams, and we're always going to have the number 1 runner, the number 2 runner. But for us to achieve success is how do we level up those other runners, those other sellers to be successful. And it's helping. You talk about mentoring or reverse mentoring. Oftentimes that doesn't come from a line supervisor or a leader or a vice president. It comes from someone from within their peer group who's doing something maybe a little differently. And so we're encouraging, people, our stronger sellers, to level up their peers to achieve that level of success. So everyone thinks we're crazy because you and I love cross-country running, but not many people do. But I think there's a lot to be learned with understanding that sport and how it can be applied to business, whether it's sales, marketing, or otherwise.
And it's just not a sales analogy either. It's like within a company, it's like alignment between departments, right? Like if, sales is running hard and marketing is not doing its thing, or operations is doing, it's like you all have to be together. And one of the great things about cross country running is you're bringing the last person on your team towards you. You're helping them. You're letting them draft up. So it's a really good analogy. And I think we're going to call this podcast, this episode, Leveling Up. So I'm going to trademark that.
I love that.
I'm going to trademark
I
that.
love that.
So
You got it.
I'm going to give a last question, and it's going to be sort of, I want to know your career defining moment. But mine was when I was a seller and I was struggling, and thought I was doing everything that I could. And I go to one who I thought was my mentor, and we're friends, and he gave great advice. And I said to him, Jim, I'm really struggling as a sales rep. Do you have any advice for me? And he looked at me. He's like, Tim, maybe sales isn't for you. And I'm like, I wasn't thinking that, but it got me to thinking, to your point about loving, enjoying what you do and focusing on that. And I really looked internally and said, okay, you know what? I've started to got my MBA in marketing. I'm like, I'm doing more there. Like, I want to see what that path is. So it took a little pushing from someone else. But I was wondering if you had, like, in your career, like some type of career defining moment. You're like, oh, that's it. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to move. Because, I mean, you've been CEO, president, chief revenue officer. You've probably had some things happen to you, early on that helped direct you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've certainly been blessed. I've had people that take a chance on me, give you a job that you really weren't qualified for, but you had certain elements that, when groomed, could blossom into an expertise. So I've been blessed, like most leaders have, and forever grateful for that. I'd say it's interesting probably the pivotal moment for me is when I admitted to myself, and I was confident enough to admit to others that I didn't know everything. And then I got to a point where I was admitting it to customers, right? Prior to being CRO at TEGNA, I ran a digital division that we owned, and it was digital marketing services. So paid search and social and email. And there's a lot of pieces in the machines for those products and a high rate of change and development. Well, it's impossible to know all things about those products. And I'd find myself in sales meetings with people, and they're asking me all these, people half my age asking me all these really, really hard questions. And I used to think that I had to know the answers to it. And then I got to a certain point in my career where I'm like, well, there's no way I can know those. So I would admit that I don't know it, but I do have people back at the shop that do. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was the time when, what was that TV show with Regis Philbin, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or whatever, mm-hmm. where you'd have a phone a friend. Well, I'd be on sales calls with business owners or C-level, executives, and not know an answer to a question. And I would take out my phone in the middle of a live sales call, and I would call a product person or a technology person and say, hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. There's 17 people around this conference table. I need you to help answer these questions that I can't answer. And these are true stories. And they would answer it. And what I'm doing is I'm building trust with the client, saying, well, there's no way Fagan's going to know the answers to all these things. But it's when you're humble enough to admit that. And then you're saying, listen, trust me, I'm going to be the tip of the spear here, but trust my organization. Yep. And we're going to deliver what we say we're going to deliver. We're not going to pretend we're going to deliver something that we don't know anything about. And so if this meeting ends because we just don't know what the answers to your questions, then this isn't meant to be. So anyway, it's a long story. I do think it was a pivot moment for me to admit that. And then you just have to surround yourself within your company with the people that can answer the questions that you can't answer.
And if you think about it, when you talk about tip of the spear and you've got these people behind you, doesn't it make the business owner or the C-level person like, oh, I have confidence in that organization rather than I'm just buying from this one person because they're telling me what I want to hear. So
absolutely. It's funny. I'm sitting in our head of client services office right now in Phoenix, And any opportunity I can get to get someone on the client service team, who's going to manage the relationship after the sale is absolutely critical. And to your point, customers, they want that and they need that. Yeah. So it's, I guess remember those old TV commercials, the more when you're watching the after school specials in the 1970s, the more you know. Well, I would I don't know, but I'm going to find someone that can help us. And the more you know, the more successful you'll be. So,
wow,
anyway,
we should end right there. That was really, that was a great, great advice. So in the byline, I'll make sure we have links to old after school specials for you. But I'd like to thank you to the Level Up episode with Fagan and Finnigan. And Tim, I really appreciate you taking some time and sharing your views on broadcast TV, leadership, sales, and overcoming obstacles. So thanks for being here, Tim.
Well, Tim, thank you. It's always a treat to be with you and talk about how great of an athlete you are. And in all seriousness, you're a talented guy. And I'm glad to see you back into teaching and sharing wisdom with others. So good to see you.
Thanks, Tim. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Report. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Report wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the show notes for more information.